Oh yeah. Once again. Uh-huh. Thank you very much. Woo! Oh gosh. Payment time. Here we go.
There. Good morning, Timothy, and good morning to everybody. Welcome to Japanese Politics One-on-One. This is episode 248, where we talk about the latest events in Japanese politics, about policies as well, and what actually shapes a lot of things in Japan for those of you who live here or do business here. Here is Timothy Langley, the CEO of the longest standing government relations agency here in Tokyo, downtown Tokyo. Timothy, good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning once again. Not
Good
running
morning,
away.
Maya. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, thank you. I hope that you're fine too. I can see that you're in your beautiful boat. Very nice background there.
Yes, so it's raining here. I'm in my home port of Hota. Couldn't get out this weekend. This is a 2-day weekend, unlike last weekend, which was a magnificent 3-day weekend. But
Right.
last weekend, I reported from my home office. This weekend, I'm on the good ship Grimm's, but it's really bad weather. I'm still working on some restoration projects, so I'm here in port. But since it's raining, I have to broadcast from inside the cabin. So this is something new for us because typically when I'm here in port, the reception, the Wi-Fi is not very good. But we received a device. Thank you very much for all of your donations and all your support, everybody. We're swimming in money. We got a device to boost the Wi-Fi. So I think I can successfully broadcast from inside the cabin. So if you have any problems, let Maya know. And also, I will talk for about 30 minutes about what's going on in Japanese politics that should be important to everybody. And then we will roll into the Q&A. So during this session, if you have questions, if you want a little bit better explanation, because I want to zip through this as quickly as possible, please feed them to Maya, and then Maya will discuss them, and we'll have a rounder discussion about those issues. There's raindrops are falling on my head. Let me close the cabin a little bit. Okay.
Please don't melt. Don't melt away. Stay there, at
Yes.
least for another hour.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Timothy. And yes, before we go into the details, again, I want to invite everybody who is watching us to let us know that you have been here with by clicking
A
like
like,
or follow, yes, subscribe.
send
And
money.
even though Timothy joked about this, well, our episodes, our briefings are entirely free of charge.
Yeah.
And we have been here once again for almost 5 years now. We are heading very steadily towards the fifth anniversary of the series, and we thank you very much for this. Please also remember that there is a synopsis which is sent out via the newsletter of Langley Esquire. And if you haven't subscribed to it yet, you can let me know and I'll add you to the email list. So, well, Timothy, let's go into more detail because a lot of things happened during that past 1 week. It has been the first week of Prime Minister Takaichi's premiership, right? And a lot of
Yes.
things actually happened in the Diet. There was a debate there, and well, everybody's talking about her policies, right? What she's going to do and how that is going to affect the economy. So let's go into that, and after that, we'll move into the Q&A session.
Great. Thank you very much, Maya, and good morning, everybody. Welcome once again to the 248th episode. Like Maya said, we're approaching our 50-year mark. We should have a big party and celebration after that. It is really a remarkable feat to be doing this every Sunday without fail for almost 5 years. While you're living your life, Maya, you've got things going on. I can see from the background, your daughter has got sticky notes for not forgetting things. Um,
Yes.
I'm here on the good ship Grimm's that is continue. It is 1 year ago this week that I received this boat in a decrepit position, and have been working on it for the last year. You have everybody in the audience have been, you know, not really following along, but you've seen that I've been dedicating my time on the weekends to fixing this vessel, and it's really come up, and we've taken it out on spins throughout the Pacific Islands that stretch outside of Tokyo Bay. But it's been 1 year. A lot has happened in 1 year. Take a look at just the last 3 weeks. Like Maya, you said, this is the third week. We're moving into the fourth week of Sanae Takaichi's premiership. She's the 104th prime minister in post-war Japan. She's the first woman. This is a big deal, and you can't say that we're at a crossroads in Japanese politics. We have already crossed that intersection. We are moving far beyond, and it's only been 3 weeks. So I'd like to give you a little bit of a synopsis of what's been going on the last week, and talk about a little bit about what you can expect in the coming days. So last week was a 4-day week because Monday was Culture Day. It was a holiday on Monday. She used that time to have I think she joined the garden party at the Imperial Palace, and she did some other cultural related things, but she was in town, and she stayed in town all this last week. She didn't have any foreign visitors, as you would kind of expect. I mean, if people were coming into town, I think the foreign ministry would say, would you please push that off for another week? She's incredibly busy this week, and she was. So on Wednesday and Thursday, she took questions in the largest committee meeting room inside the parliament, and that is the budget committee room. And if you're ever watching TV and there are questions and the prime minister standing up to respond, that's always the budget committee room. And it's kind of a large room. It's got a alcove where the reporters sit and some observers. So the camera angle is always the same camera angle from typically NHK. But when you see that, you can assume that that's from the budget committee meeting room. And she had 2 days of grilling there. So depending on how large the party is, they get a certain allotment of time to grill the prime minister. And so that means that the Constitutional Democratic Party and Mr. Noda, former Prime Minister Mr. Noda, head of the Constitutional Democratic Party, had a field day in questioning the Prime Minister. He didn't really go at her with claws exposed, but he did grill her pretty effectively. And then the other parties also had their time, but the lion's share was with Mr. Noda. He is a tough cookie. He is prime ministerial material. Should there be a call for no confidence, he would definitely be in charge of that charge and in charge of that initiative to oust Ms. Takaichi, or whoever the prime minister is, the Constitutional Democratic Party, that is, to face that challenge. So the other opposition parties, Mr. Tamaki's party and Ishin no Kai. Ishin no Kai, you can't really say it's in the opposition anymore, but you can't say it's part of the coalition either. It has agreed with the LDP to join forces with Ms. Takaichi and the LDP under certain conditions. And it's not going to be wearing handcuffs in order to do that. It hasn't accepted a cabinet position. So it's outside of the administration. I think you can say accurately, it's outside of the administration, no cabinet representation. So if it doesn't like what is being said or done by the prime minister, it can say so, and it can stomp its feet and slam down its fist on the table. If you're in the administration, if you have a cabinet position, decorum dictates that you shouldn't do that. You can't do that. That's talking out of school. And in fact, Mr. Ishiba, the immediately past prime minister, has been speaking a little bit out of school. He has been on a bit of a speech tour and throwing barbs at Ms. Takaichi and some of the right-wing policies that she's pursuing. And that's created a little bit of an ire. He was well known before as being a little bit of a lightning rod, criticizing the administration, even though he was in the LDP. That made him a bit of a favorite and made him a little bit of a maverick. But I think people are saying, as a former prime minister immediately passed, be quiet, let her, give her some time without, trying to show off how much you know about the situation and how much better you would handle it if you were prime minister. Give her a little bit of a breath. And like I said, it's only been 3 weeks. And this last week, the grilling took up 2 days. So you've got to imagine Monday was a holiday. She boned up on it all last week and then performed on Wednesday and Thursday. That was in the lower house. Next week, starting tomorrow, actually, I think it'll be on Tuesday and Wednesday, she'll receive the same opportunity to be grilled by the upper house. So each house has an opportunity to quiz the prime minister. What do you intend to do in this extraordinary diet session? There are 5 weeks left, Madame Prime Minister. What is your administration intending to do? And we have heard this idea that you're hoisting about reducing the number of our members by 10%. What kind of cockamamie idea is this? So you've got to imagine that the opposition parties are really jumping on that. Ishin, in order for Ishin to join with the LDP, I think most people know this. I don't need to get into too much detail unless it comes up in the Q&A. Ishin said, we will join you. We will join in pushing policies through, but those policies have to represent 10 of our issues. And it needs to be done, at least some of them need to be done in this extraordinary diet session, this 53-day diet session. Some of that is already gone. 3 weeks of that are gone. We're moving into the 4th week. And the prime minister has said, yes, I'll do that. I'll do my best to reduce the number of diet seats, the lower house diet seats, by 10%. That's a big deal. That's almost 50 diet seats. So there are some people that like that idea, and there are some people that don't like that idea. And so for this last week, the prime minister was able to show her mettle, to begin to talk about what her policies are going to be about. If you're going to reduce the number of diet seats because the population of Japan and the core of politics and the people that are being represented in the parliament has changed over the last 20 or 30 years. If you're going to do that, then you should do other tweaks as well. It shouldn't just be window dressing. So she made a proposal this last week that goes into effect immediately of reducing the cabinet members' salaries by about 20%. So when you become a cabinet member, you get certain other benefits. You get certain combat pay as a member of the cabinet. And she's reducing the amount of money that these cabinet officials are getting immediately. So she's really coming out strong. She's a conservative. She's a fiscal conservative, as you can see from some of the policy pronouncements. And this idea of reducing the seats of the diet, she's committed to that. And if she doesn't do that, then Ishin is going to say, you've cheated me. You didn't do what you said you were going to do. So at the end of this diet, around the 17th of December, when the diet closes, you weren't able to do that, then we're taking our ball, we're going home. And when the diet opens up in January, you're going to have a fist fight on your hands. And throughout the Oshogatsu and the New Year's break, we're going to be colluding with the opposition parties to get you the hell out of here, and maybe have Mr. Noda run as a contender or somebody else. So in that environment, there's a lot of really briskly moving pieces. And so her popularity remains high. So she's still in a honeymoon period. And most prime ministers enjoy a brief honeymoon period. It happens all over the world. When you become a new leader, there's a little bit of admiration and respect and anticipation for you. So they give you a little bit of a runway, usually maybe 2 months or so. In the United States, they call it the first 100 days. I don't know if it's actually 100 days, but it's a honeymoon period, and she's in that honeymoon period. And the popularity that she has, the general popularity polls have proven her to be around 48%. Nobody has been that popular except maybe Koizumi many years ago. Koizumi with the great hair and the Elvis kind of look with George Bush. You might remember that. So her approval rating is right around 48%. It took a little bit of a dive this last week, but these polls come out every 4 weeks or so. So we can anticipate that this wind in her sails will carry her forward and allow her to do some things that she normally wouldn't want to do, like saying, I'm going to reduce the cabinet minister's salary. That isn't appreciated by the cabinet ministers. And also the reduction of 50 diet seats. When you think about it, there are two sections of diet seats in the lower house, also in the upper house, but this reduction is going to occur in the lower house. And the promise that was insisted upon by Ishin was reduce the number of lower house seats by 10%. And there are two groups of diet members. One group is, hi, my name is Timothy Langley. Vote for me because I represent your district and I kiss your babies and I go to the funerals and the weddings and I'm the guy that built the bridge, and so vote for me. That's one. That's the independent members contingent of diet members. The other one is, I'm running, my name is whatever my name is. I'm running in your district. I'm going to do a good job for you. And, or maybe I'm repeating my term of office, but I come from the LDP or I come from Komeito. So the members the constituency who votes, they vote on one side for a person's name. And for the other one, they vote for a party. So the party, depending on how popular the party is, excuse me, depending on how popular the party is, the number of people in a list will be cleared for diet seats. So this is the section that the LDP and Ishin is going after, the proportional representation. It's easier to do that. Excuse me for that. It's easier to do that because the proportional representatives represent the entire nation, and so according to different districts. So it's not like you're voting for that individual person. You're voting for the party, and then the party has selected the pecking order of people. So Ishin and LDP, it's a very clever move by Ishin if you think about it, reduced by 50 seats the proportional representation, because we have some people in the proportional representation, but it's the fringe groups, it's the smaller parties who have a higher percentage of their members who belong to the proportional representation seats, not to the individual seats. So it's easier to get those within a very limited period of time within this extraordinary diet session. So that's what they're going after. One of the issues from this last week that became apparent was Mr. Noda from the Constitutional Democratic Party, who is throwing barbs and trying to stymie the progress of the Sanae Takaichi administration and to raise his own profile. He says, look, why are you attacking the proportional representation? We should, if we agree to the 10% reduction, some should come from the individual seats and some should come from the proportional representation. That wrench in the works is not going to work within this diet session. So he's trying to jam and gum up the works so that the LDP can't perform on its promise. So the more likely outcome is that these 50 seats will come from the proportional representation. There'll be a bit of a fight about that. And I think that they will, yeah, it's hard to say, but I think that they'll probably succeed in that because it's a do or die issue. The LDP has agreed to a 10-point plan proposed by Ishin. Some of them were knocked off, but some of them were accepted. So it's she needs to achieve a success in the majority of these, and some of them are insisted upon by the end of this year. So a 10% reduction of the lower house seats, primarily cutting proportional representation seats. Corporate political donations, that's still, Ishin has insisted that the LDP divorce itself from corporate donations. And for the LDP, this is like cutting your own stomach open, because they are the party of big business. They're big blue. They represent the corporations and the export machinery that has become the Japanese economy. And so the big corporations who have money, they have surplus of money, continue to contribute one way or the other to the LDP succeeding in itself or achieving some of the policy objectives that are important to the big corporations. The opposition party, and Ishin in particular, all acknowledge this. This was the problem that got us into the situation in the first place. Since corporate donations are heavily regulated and watched very carefully, people go to other kind of divergent ways to collect money so that they can pursue policies and skim and use the money that they've skimmed to make things work, to make government work. And that's not unique to Japan. That was the outcome of the Seiwakai, the Abe faction, putting money into their pockets and not reporting it. People wanted to have more money. In some instances, they were using it for cars or for clothes or drinking in Ginza. But the Ishin has insisted, look, the only people that really benefit from corporate donations is the LDP, so we want that out. And all of the opposition parties agree to that. Nobody benefits from corporate donations except the LDP. There might be a little bit, but it's the lifeblood for the LDP. So it's still under debate. It will go into continuing debate this next week, but it needs to be decided pretty quickly so that they can vote on it. The other thing that the LDP agreed upon was to make Osaka the secondary capital. And this is pitched as a disaster contingency. It's considered a symbolic win for Ishin. It doesn't have a lot of meaning right now, but it could in the future. And I think all of these things that Ishin has insisted on are for a long game. They haven't insisted on a diet cabinet seat, which would give them a base of operations. So, for example, Komeito for 29 years was in alliance with the LDP and eventually secured the cabinet position for overseeing the Ministry of what ministry did they have? That was land and transportation. So a very wealthy ministry where they can parcel out and they can pursue policies that somehow, maybe in a very opaque way, benefit some of their constituency. So they did that for 25 years. They gave that up, and Ishin could have grabbed that, but they said, we're playing the long game here. So we want Osaka to be the secondary capital, just in case. We want a reduction of 10% of the lower house, because when there's a reduction there, right now, the LDP and Ishin don't quite have 50% in the lower house. They're a little bit skinnier in the upper house. But if there's a 10% reduction, that means that by calculation, the LDP and Ishin together, without any other changes, would then occupy 50%. So this is the scheme. This is the plan that they're pursuing here. The other thing to remember, and I'm sure it'll come up in the Q&A, is this idea of reducing the members. It doesn't go into effect until there's an election. So in the election, then there'll be votes for individuals to represent various districts, and there'll be a proportional representation list. The list will be reduced by 10%, and that's the outlook for reducing the number of seats, and also the plan for securing Ishin and LDP to have 50% of the vote, so they can begin to push these policies through without having to negotiate every single detail with the opposition party so that they can get 2 or 3 or 5 more votes to secure passage of these different bills. And the other thing that that's important is when they reduce the proportional representation seats, Ishin will lose some seats as well. So will the LDP. So there are some LDP members who are saying, look, I only won by the skin of my teeth in the last election, and you want to reduce some of these. I think I'm going to fall out. I don't want to vote for the passage of this bill. The LDP and Ishin need all of their members to vote in unison in order to have any standing chance for this proposal to go through. Or alternatively, they need to attract a lot of people who are independents or rebelling from other political parties. So it's a difficult challenge. The LDP is going to lose. The Ishin no Kai is going to lose. Maybe they would lose less than 10%, but let me see. The Democratic Party for the People would lose maybe 15% in this arrangement. But the smaller parties, Komeito, Reiwa, the Social Democratic Party, they could lose 25 to 66% of their representation, possibly driving them out of relevance. So this is a very big issue. It will be hotly contested. It'll be what we talk about until the diet ends. And this could be the activant to break the LDP and the Ishin because the LDP wasn't able to perform. It's not completely in their power, but Ishin could say you didn't really dedicate your resources. You didn't put as much energy and enthusiasm into passing this thing. And so you failed at it. So we don't like you anymore, even though you did do good on making Osaka the secondary capital, and you did make education free up until high school and some of the other demands that they have. So let's see how that goes. And that's something that we'll be watching. The other thing that comes up whenever there's a change of government, it's always scandals come up. Now, Mr. Ishiba was very lucky. He didn't have any scandals, you'll remember. Nobody was really pilloried or identified. There was one issue with the Minister of Agriculture. He blurted out something about rice and the price of rice, and it shouldn't be such a big deal. He has so much rice, he doesn't know why everybody's up in arms about it. That created a big brouhaha, and the Prime Minister stood behind him for 2 days and then finally gave up. And that's how Mr. Koizumi came in as the new Minister of Agriculture. But after that, there was nothing of great importance that happened. Now we have a new administration, a new Prime Minister, and a couple of fresh scandals are coming up. So some of these scandals, they're just to kind of diminish, to kind of pull down the legs of the leader as they're trying to claw up. They're in a somewhat of a vulnerable position, so it's a good time to attack. But also it's because when they select their new cabinet, sometimes they've done due diligence, but Bunshun is just waiting there, salivating. I hope they pick this guy because we have some dirt on him. Somebody has reported to us as a whistleblower. We're going to keep his name quiet, but we're going to write a scathing piece if this person becomes a prime minister. And that's how they sell their weekly magazine, and they do a very good job at it. So there are 4 scandals that have just emerged this last week. One of them, I think maybe over the last 10 days. The latest one is with Mr. Hayashi, who is foreign minister, and he's accused of underreporting donations connected to a private consultancy staffed by former aides. So, like I said, politics requires money to run. The more money it has, the more efficiently and effectively it runs. But it's expedient and it's dangerous, and it's sometimes it's illegal. But the temptation is so great, people get caught up in that. The Hayashi one is really fresh. We haven't gotten too far into it, but it is interesting that he was one of the candidates for prime minister. You'll remember he's very polished. He was chief cabinet secretary. he's a as all of them are, career politician. So he's being attacked, and eventually, as this story develops, the opposition party will say, Miss Takaichi, you need to ask for his resignation. You need to put somebody else in there because he's crooked. The second one is with Mr. Minoru Kyuchi. So he is the Minister of Economic Revitalization, and he's facing allegations of a conflict of interest involving a policy institute that received government AI research contracts. And his credibility in the face of his, or in the face of Sanae Economics, could suffer if this snowballs. He is in a key position. He is a high-profile, relevant member of the cabinet, and this attack on him could put her off balance. The other one is with Mr. Koizumi. I think everybody knows, but Shinjiro Koizumi married a very famous actress, movie star, by the name of Christy Takigawa. And she's been accused of, Ishin has reported on it, trading on her social media, that she gets preferential access to cultural diplomacy projects. And it's unsubstantiated at this point, but it's become something of a high profile issue because her husband, Minister of Defense, Koizumi, just visited Hawaii this last week for a meeting of Asia Pacific ministers of defense. And he put on a Hawaiian shirt, as you normally would, and that was featured widely. And now everybody is who is fashion conscious is buying these shirts, and there's a little bit of marketing going on there. So there's anything will work. Maybe it doesn't stick, but it feeds the press, it feeds the curious onlookers, the participants in the social fabric of Japanese politics. So sometimes these don't have good legs, but she is she's very flashy, and her husband is rapidly going up the escalator for political power. So he becomes an easy target. The more important one is with Mr. Fujita, who is the Ishin co-leader. So Ishin is a little bit of a strange party. Their leader is governor of Osaka Prefecture, and he has a co-leader who is a member of the lower house, and his name is Mr. Fujita Fumitake. And he has one of his secretaries has been using public funds to produce party or briefings and media for the member. And so this is seen as being kind of a corruption of use of his power to get money funneled back into his coffers. And this one is hot. This one is hot because if you think about it, what if Miss Takaichi is not able to perform on all of her promises within this diet session, and the Ishin is also fighting a rearguard action because of different scandals, and it could be that they don't really have the wherewithal to challenge this alliance that they're forming. That they better stick close to the LDP because they're also wounded, and misery loves company. So it could be a ploy. Bunshun loves this sort of thing. So it's something that you just it's the texture of Japanese politics, and maybe we can get into a little bit more in the Q&A if you're interested in it. Onto the economy, the dollar closed at 153.54. It's a slight recovery from midweek, but it's still near a mid-decade low. So it's something to be watching. U.S.-Japan interest rate remains kind of yawning. Investors continue to borrow the the cheap yen to buy higher yielding dollars. And so the dollar is strong. They'll purchase dollars with the yen. Excuse me. But the Bank of Japan stood firm last week. There's no hint of tightening their interest rate. There's no hawkish language. But the U.S. bond yields rose last week, and that bolsters the dollar. And the new government's proclamation of responsible fiscal expansion talks about, essentially stimulus with discipline, reinforced market expectations for ongoing monetary accommodation. So you can see in her selection of her advisors, former Bank of Japan executive as her advisor, what she's going to be doing with the economy, with the yen, with the value there. Typically, when the yen reaches this point, intervention is just around the corner. So it's 153 now, 154, 155. Typically, the Bank of Japan jumps in because it really begins to have a negative impact throughout the economy. So we just need to watch what's going to be happening this next week with the Bank of Japan, if there are any commentaries about that, or even a hint of a short recovery rally. And the U.S. Consumer Price Index, take a look at that and the dollar's strength to see if it's going to go higher. It looks like it could go to 55, 56. But I think if it does that, then you're going to see Bank of Japan action to support that. And that, once again, that triggers the ire of the United States by saying you're manipulating the market and you're supporting you. Let the market decide. Let the hidden hand of consumers decide what that price should be. So there's plenty to look out for there. There have been live fire drills in and around Kunashiri and Etofuro up in the Northern Territories this last week. The Russians have expanded their 50,000 kilometer expansion zone. So it's an exclusion zone as far as they're concerned, particularly with regard to the Japanese fishing and shipping vessels. So, of course, Japan has lodged a protest. You're not supposed to do this. These islands don't belong to you. They're under controversy. We haven't signed a peace treaty with you as a consequence of that, in fact. So back off, but they're not doing that. They said that they will release this exclusionary practice in the near term, but I think it's all related to Japan signing off on sanctions to Russia in concert with the United States as well. The Senkaku Islands also are a flashpoint. We've reported on this these last 3 weeks. Chinese vessels continue to violate the bases there, the boundaries there. It's such a sensitive place that nobody really has a permanent position there. They don't have any housing or buildings or anything there that are manned 24 hours. It's such a delicate place. The Koreans, the Chinese, the Taiwanese, the Japanese don't. They just keep it as a kind of a no man's land. But when the Chinese begin to, drop listening devices and violate it, it's almost on a daily basis. So if there's going to be a flashpoint between Taiwan and China, it's probably going to reverberate, first of all, the Senkakus before it even hits, for example, Okinawa or even the Philippines. But those are flashpoints as well. And the Chinese Coast Guard continues to re-enter Japanese waters. What is it? 337 consecutive days. There was a bit of a hiatus there when the typhoon passed through, but they are back to it. Let me see. Miss Takaichi, the Prime Minister, she had a meeting with Taiwan's president, and it drew a harsh rebuke from Beijing, which called it a gravely erroneous signal. So she had a good meeting with Xi in Korea, 10 days ago, and then she met with the president of Taiwan. So they're saying, you better be careful here because we had a nice meeting. It was kind of nice. It was 30 minutes and they smiled, but the body language of the photograph didn't show much affinity. So she's kind of testing the waters. She's not known as a favorite for China. She's more known as a lover of Taiwan and a supporter of Taiwan's independence. So that continues to be a flashpoint and probably something that will be a signature relationship with the Japanese government while she's prime minister. Also, she has mentioned that she would like to meet our dear leader, Kim Jong-un, in North Korea. She's floated that out. She had a meeting, and in fact, when President Trump was here, he also had a meeting with the parents and the relatives of people who had been kidnapped by North Korea. This has gone on for many years. It's died down. There aren't so many kidnapping cases now, but it does happen, and it's happened very aggressively. Maybe 20 or 30 years ago, many people were just conked on the head and thrown into a bag, and then rowed out to a waiting submarine, and then escorted to North Korea, where they have lived and died, and there's no news on them. Some of them were released under Mr. Abe, but there's still a lot of stories that go without any kind of recognition or even admission that this is what's happened. So I think Ms. Takaichi is floating out. I'd like to visit maybe even North Korea, although that's not part of it, but that would probably be a component of it. But I kind of doubt Mr. Kim is interested in broaching that with the Japanese, because he knows it's unless there's a gift that's together with that, opening trade routes or something like that. And with Ms. Takaichi, you never know. I mean, look what Donald Trump has done. Always the unusual, always the thing from the left field coming in, and an idea that he's explored, always keeping the press, unbalanced. This might be a tactic that she has studied, and maybe that's the kind of administration. It's too early to tell. Only 3 weeks. We're moving into the 4th week. She hasn't had much of a chance. We can see her pronouncements, but I think we're not going to be able to see much until this diet session ends and we start the new diet session in January. But let's just stay tuned. The other thing that's going on, if you live in Japan, the bear attacks. Maya, be careful.
Right, yes.
The number of bear attacks has just escalated, and it's not because more people are reporting on it. It is a matter of fact that the bears are coming out of the woods and going into populated areas looking, because apparently the nut harvest or the wild berries, it just hasn't produced enough for them to get ready for hibernation. And so they've been in Sapporo, they've been in Akita, there have been people that have been attacked. There have been people that have been eaten, in fact, by bears recently. There's a special task force that enlists even the self-defense forces with rifles to go to some of these issues to maybe reduce the population. But I think, hunting bears is not something for soldiers. It's something for bear hunters. It's not easy to find and hunt bears. It's a real specialty, like with anything else. So we'll see how that works out. But it is a big issue in Japanese lexicon, what's going on right now. So with that, I think I'd like to draw this to a close. This is the 3rd week, or this last week was the 3rd week of the Takaichi administration. We move into the 4th week. She'll be meeting with her constituents in the upper house and have 2 days of grilling there. More issues will come up. Some of the things she said last week in the lower house will be raised and criticized or attacked. So stay tuned for that. I will report next week, hopefully on the good ship Grimm's, but hopefully on the deck. And there's a lot going to be going on in the meantime. So thank you for signing in and joining us every week for this briefing. I hope you've gained some insight out of it. Let's get to the real meat of this briefing and into the Q&A, Maya. Thank you.
Thank you, Timothy. And again, to everybody who has joined us in the past 15 minutes or so, please remember to let us know that you have been here by hitting like or subscribe. And also, we always encourage you to share these briefings with the people you think might benefit from the information in them. Because, well, there is a lot going on indeed, but also if you follow the briefings, you eventually become able of well, creating that picture in your head, and you also learn to kind of predict what you might expect or what might happen on the way forward, which is important also for everybody who lives in Japan, or everybody, even more so, for everybody who does business here. So, and again, thank you, John Marsh, and thank you, Peter Pan, too. So I don't know
Peter
who you
Pan,
are. Yes, yes, and Yuka as well, and Safi. We're moving into the Q&A now. So let me start.
Safi.
Yes, Safi, it's very nice to have you with us. Thank you for joining, of course. And well, just give us a few minutes before we get to the questions. I will go through the questions in the order we received them, or sometimes I may group them, well, by the topic, by topic. So just give me the discretion to do either of these things. Let me start with the very first question. Again, everybody knows that, well, this question comes from Byron. And here we go. So Byron writes, Abenomics had and therefore Takaichinomics likely will have a component of growth strategy that stimulates private investment. Yet are Japanese companies far too top-heavy with too many individuals with exalted titles sitting and doing nothing? Is that a fundamental dampener for effective decision making? Would any good idea likely be crushed amidst the endless meetings that such mostly non-English speaking individuals insist on? Timothy.
Okay, I think that's just Byron getting something off of his chest. I don't know if I can respond to that. The ability of the Japanese government to impact change in corporate Japan is very difficult. You might remember they said, let's make more women in the boardroom. Let's increase it, at least, 5% or 10% of
Mhm.
the board should be women, or let's find women in the in the upper reaches. It's very difficult, and maybe there are benefits to the government for pursuing this, and maybe they have carrots and sticks to achieve it. But it's very difficult, and I think besides the women issue, I mean, even the prime minister is having a difficulty packing women into her cabinet. In the sub cabinet, in the vice minister position, yes, she's been very effective in placing women diet members in positions of authority. But it's a difficult thing to do, and the corporations support the LDP largely, and so Ms. Takaichi is a little bit restricted from saying too much. But the fact that she's committed to reducing the diet seats by 10%, and she's cut 20% from the salary of her cabinet ministers, it does indicate that she is more on a fiscal bend here. So there are things that she can do to cajole the corporations, but the corporations respond to their shareholders, and if the shareholders are knowledgeable of you know the corporation being top heavy and a lot of people not doing anything because they're entering their retirement age, and mostly they golf and they have a new corporate car every year with a driver. That's pretty much par for the course. And I think it would require a bigger revolution than just the prime minister or the administration trying to cajole the corporations from to be a little bit more cost effective. I don't see much enthusiasm there. But
Yes, and the reason because that is happening, I mean, there are, well, let's say inherent reasons, and they come from the legacy of the values of the culture, cultural
yeah,
values, once again, let's say so. And the way these Japanese corporations have operated forever. I know that many people would say that, yeah, things must change, and I agree with you, but also The change in Japan usually is generational once again, and it takes a generation or two eventually to really experience that change and
Yeah.
see it in front of our eyes, right? So it is not chaotic, it is not sudden, and still it happens. I know that by Western standard, it happens at what's that, glacial pace, right? So we're still here. And I can say that anyway, Japan is really changing in front of our eyes because of, the factors that we have talked about. I mean, it's happening not only here. We've got the demographic change, the crisis, we've got the innovation and also the explosion of technology and new technologies that come into play and so on. But let me move to the second question by Byron. So it is, as most Japanese corporate and government officials can read information only in the Japanese language that is not spoken or used anywhere else in the world, how accurate or comprehensive is their information to be able to make wise strategic choices?
So if I understand the question, Byron's saying, look, the Japanese are not following a lot of the press that's going on because it's not in Japanese and they're only following it perfunctorily.
I guess that's part of the question, but I think that once again, it's more about yes, the Japanese not being what's that in at pace or in pace with what is happening in Japan or out of Japan, things that are reported only in English or any other language.
Yeah, I don't know. There's probably a little bit more behind that question, Byron. I'm
Mm.
not sure, but it is true that the Japanese follow a different um, news cycle. So, for example, 3I Atlas is a satellite, an interstellar satellite that has entered into our solar system. And if you talk to many Japanese, they don't know anything about it. But Americans and many Westerners, they're following this development of a very rare satellite that has come into our solar system. It's very rare to happen, and so a lot of people are watching that and talking about it. But when you talk to Japanese, very, very few know about that. That's one issue, and it doesn't deal with politics or the economy or anything like that. But even the news cycle, you look at what NHK produces on a nightly basis, and there's very little about international conflict, about what's going on in Gaza. You might hear something, but it's usually, about genocide or about feeding the people. It's not a full, robust story. Also in Iran or Russia, Ukraine, you'll get a little bit, but what's going on in Venezuela, you never hear anything about that. What's going on in the United States with this divergence with the administration and the people on the left who lost the election, the Kamala Harris election, and they're angry, they're frustrated, and they want the immigration um, component of the Trump administration to back down a little bit, to be a little bit kinder to these people who came in with an invitation from the president of the United States to come into America, and now they're being kicked out. You don't hear much about that, and that's a pretty big issue. But there are also other issues going on in Algeria and Nigeria. There's a lot of really, really horrible stuff going on internationally. You don't get much of it here, and I think for the Japanese, you probably have a good beat on this too, Maya. For the Japanese, it's an island country, it's an island culture. If it impacts us directly or somewhat indirectly, we'll report on it. We'll talk about it. But otherwise, it's your deal. We are an island, and we are unto ourselves, and we're an international trader. Our economy depends on free and open trade. And if anything impacts that, then yes, we're on it. But otherwise, uh, you know, be happy.
Right. I also want to say one thing, that this image of Japan and Japanese people not speaking English or any other languages is actually becoming old. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying this, to argue, but because I saw recently, I had the opportunity to travel across the country and meet people from a specific industry and also another industry as well, also people in the government. And I can tell you that the number of people who are fluent in English and have absolutely no problem understand it and communicate in English,
It's high.
well, is very high. It is very different from what how the number was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And with this, I think that, Timothy, what you mentioned is more true, that basically they react and make strategic decisions based not only on what they read in the news or the information they get in English, but also based on what actually impacts their business and the potential impact, because some events will not impact those businesses directly, and so they do not have to basically react to that, right? And their strategic decisions do not include, let's say, measures, countermeasures to some events. So I would say that Japan is really changing, even though it is not obvious on the surface. The change is here, it's happening. And once again, more and more people are speaking foreign languages. It's not only English. There are people who speak Spanish, German, French, Russian. And if you travel around the country, you will inevitably meet some of them. Okay, and then the third question from Byron is, if Japanese companies today, even those with large retained earnings, are so risk averse, what can be done to make Japan great again, as in the immediate post-war years of incredibly high growth when people's income did double?
So one of the things that is characteristic of the Japanese economy, the Japanese population, is that there is a segment of the population, the bubble generation, the generation that is now entering or already in their retirement years. They have saved precipitously. And so they have a lot of wealth saved up either in commercial paper, in stocks or bonds, or in just cash. And if I mean this, the amount of money that this generation holds far exceeds the GDP of the country. So the amount of money that it's, I guess you could say it's sleeping. It's not really doing very much. You you wouldn't normally put it in the bank because the bank doesn't pay any interest there. So I think to respond to your specific question, I think if and this generation is famously risk averse. So you need to encourage them by giving them high returns on investment that they would potentially release. And the Japanese economy is not like that. I mean, startups are struggling for money. Japanese corporations and Japanese wealthy individuals, even Japanese people who have a high salary that do have a little bit of wherewithal that they could invest in, typically don't. So startup companies have a really hard time getting investment. And if it was a little bit more loose, if it was a little bit more, you've got winners and losers, but when you win really big. And maybe the threat profile or the risk profile is somewhat diminished. That would cause this flame of innovation to occur. But it's hard. A lot of things that happen in the United States and some of the other countries happen in a garage, right? They have space to experiment or to work on something while they're also pursuing another career. And Japan doesn't have garages, so how are you going to be able to have an opportunity for people to exercise their intuition or their creativity outside of the bounds of the their their regular job? It's just not, like we frequently say, Maya. It's not really part of the culture. It's not a learned or an attribute that has been honed by the education system or by pursuing sports or by going through the education process from high school to college, from college to potentially a graduate school, and then to enter the company. That's the pattern without too much job hopping for the blue bloods, if we can say that. So I think that juice that you're looking for is rather weak, and the rewards and the risks are just out of balance in the United States and other countries. you can take that risk, and even if you fail, you're okay. You can still recreate yourself. Here in Japan, one failure and one divorce and one kind of big mistake, and you're out of the race. Is, I think, how many people view it, and that's a debilitating factor in creating innovation and moving uh, the ball forward.
Yeah, and once again, it's about, creating and developing new industries, about the nation coming together after a crisis, I believe. But I also believe that Japan has not or does not have this awareness of being in a crisis, really, really hard
Yeah,
crisis, where they need to bounce back, right? So, yeah, we'll see what happens. Hopefully, let's say the recovery, even if it is not so fast, it will still happen. Now,
on that point, Maya,
yes,
the current prime minister has made it a point of saying we need to roll up our sleeves and get to work. I'm going to be a working prime minister. We're going to get to work and we're going to fix things. So she has kind of said that. I think she's that kind of person. She's that kind of personality,
yeah,
um, and I think she's dedicated to pushing that envelope forward. I think I'm relatively hopeful of her administration. I haven't seen or heard anything that I dislike of what she's doing, and I think, yeah, she's in the honeymoon. Give her some runway. Let her explore some of these things. Let them develop. Let her kind of manage the opposition, mollify them when she can, but Japan, from the outside observer's perspective, it's in real trouble. It needs to do things to get it back on track. The debt to GDP ratio is just enormous. Nobody in the G20 has that kind of a situation, so that prevents you from being a little bit more expansive, a little bit more innovative, maybe. The Ministry of Finance, even for the Prime Minister to suggest certain things, will say, okay, but how are you going to pay for it? It's interesting. Ishin said, look, let's reduce the gasoline tax, and so that we can achieve something. And the Constitutional Democratic Party is for that as well. So let's get a committee together. They got the committee together, and they said, yes, let's reduce it. And then the issue came up. Okay, so if we reduce that and the amount of money that generates is reduced in the budget, where are we going to cut that? And they go, oh yeah, well, let's reduce the gasoline tax next year then, but let's agree that it needs to be done. So they just, you know, it's the same old story that we hear over and over again.
yes. Here comes, well, along these lines comes a question from Greg, who says, "Is there a timeline for the LDP to take action on the Ishin's 10 demands? The LDP has a history of agreeing with demands and then not delivering due
Yeah,
to various reasons."
yeah, expediency. Yes.
Yes. So I think that you touched upon this earlier in this briefing, Timothy, but is there a timeline for the LDP today to take action on this?
Yes.
Or, yeah,
So there are 10 key issues that Ishin and the LDP agreed upon. And a few of them need to be decided within this diet session. And that is very aggressive. And it tells you how much the LDP needed Ishin to come aboard, kind of come aboard, um, 1 foot in and 1 foot out. So they're being careful. They know exactly what Greg has said. You guys make promises and then you renege on them. So we're not fully on board. We'll continue to watch, hold your feet to the fire. But of the 10, there are a couple that must be done this diet session, and that's before the diet session, this extraordinary diet session, ends on December 17th, which is a Wednesday. It could be extended, but we're already in the 17th. You're already in Oshogatsu. You're already going to these nomikais and these, the end of the year parties. Uh, Although the country doesn't shut down, the last 2 weeks of the year, yeah, it's hard to get anything really done, because people are saying goodbye to the last year and attending all of their club activities and their colleagues and the company um, um, uh, parties and that sort of thing. So it could be extended a couple of days, but yeah, if the 10% reduction of the lower house is not achieved, Ishin says we're out of here. That's drop dead. And by the way, the other drop dead is make Osaka the secondary capital. I think that's an easy give. Yes, we now say that Osaka is the secondary capital. Move on. What's the next issue?
Right.
But there are some other issues. I think the gasoline issue was another one that they said that they would move on. A supplemental budget, which they are working on to pass before this diet session is over, is another. But there are a couple of them of the 10 that must be done. Otherwise, Ishin is going to take its ball home.
Right. Okay, thank you for that. And also from Hiroaki, is there a strategic plan of the LDP issued coalition government amid the US government shutdown?
No, I haven't heard anything about that. I'm not up to speed. Hiroaki, if you have some insight on that, please share it with us. The government shutdown, it's the longest so far I think in U.S. history that the government has been shut down. I think eventually it will be resolved. It needs to be resolved. Too many people are being negatively impacted by that, but it also gives great initiative and great fodder to the Republicans who could kind of continue to hit home. But this fractious divide between the Republicans and the Democrats, it is just it's just so hot, and it's almost entering. Well, it has entered a conflict situation. There are riots. There are people that are being killed. There are people that are being identified for assassination. It is a huge issue, and it could evolve into something far more serious. The President of the United States is taking aggressive action with the National Guard and with the military to assist in quelling violence and crime in certain cities. There was a big raid in Chicago just a couple of days ago, where they had maybe 200 or 300 riot police and military land in a housing district where some of the gang members were. They arrested maybe 40 or 50 gang members, and so this continues to escalate. And on the other side, on the left side, they're continuing to become even more aggressive and throwing rocks and bottles and fighting, and also identifying certain individuals for assassination. We will pay you $10,000 if you assassinate any one of these people, or if you can kidnap them, we'll give you $8,000, something like that. So that is really outrageous. So that's what's going on there.
Okay, so let's go back to Japanese politics. And
okay.
A question from Manabe-san. What do you think about the selection of I think that the deputy chief cabinet secretary? Is there a possibility that it will hinder the collection and dissemination of information and coordination with the bureaucrats?
Give me some more information. What are we talking about? This is Manabe-san.
This is Manabe-san, yes. So Manabe-san, if you can help us understand your question a little bit better,
so
please.
The chief cabinet secretary is supported by a vice cabinet secretary. And Mr. Manabe is asking, the selection of this individual, does it signal anything beyond just it's his turn to be in a vice ministerial role? But I'm not sure what he's getting at. Who is the individual that was identified as the vice minister? I'm not up to
Okay,
speed.
we've got actually 3 of them, and one of them is Keiichiro Tachibana, and then also we've got Kazuhiko Aoki and Fumitoshi Sato. So, and yes, Manabe-san, please do help us if maybe I have misread your question, and we'll come back to it a little bit later. Okay?
Okay. So in anticipation of that, for every minister that they have, there are 2 vice ministers. One vice minister is from the Diet, and another vice minister is from the bureaucracy. And I think what Mr. Manabe is talking about is the individual that was identified from the bureaucracy to be the vice minister for
Mhm.
the chief cabinet secretary. But let's see what else he has to say about that.
Right. Okay. And all right. So going on to the next questions we've got here. Just give me a second because we've got quite a few of them. So for some reason, I cannot get all of them here. All right, going to LinkedIn then. Because yes, we've got questions from Ryan Fairchild. So and they came pretty
Okay.
early on. So I tried to actually go to them and to honor, the order of reception. So okay, here we go. So she says, or she writes, given that Ms. Takaichi has pledged the self-defense forces support behind Taiwan, I'm curious to hear more about the internal political dynamics discussions of various parties regarding Article 9,
Yeah.
Ishin's policy platform, and how party and public sentiment is on this issue. Last I heard, NIK was for revising Article 9 and increase defense spending. I am not sure what NIK means here, but yes, maybe that's the
Who is
call.
this question from?
This is from Ryan or Orion Fairchild.
So this sounds like maybe Rianne is a recent uh, attendee to the briefing.
Yes, she joined us earlier this year and she has been following the episodes
Okay. Okay.
since
So this
then.
issue comes up pretty frequently when we talk about defense spending and about the defense industry complex that is beginning to emerge. Actually, it's emerging very quickly. Um, the prime minister, noticing that Mr. Trump authorized South Korea to begin production of nuclear submarines, went and said, "How about us? We'd like to do that too. It's a good idea. Can we get in on this deal too?" So Japan does produce submarines. It sells submarines. It was in a big competition that it lost to the French for Australian submarines maybe 6 years ago, Maya. Um, but they're trying to produce uh, military hardware that is defensive in nature, but it can be made more offensive with attachments that maybe aren't produced by Japan. So helicopters, robotics, Navy vessels, Coast Guard vessels, that sort of thing. But there is money to be made in offensive weaponry, and the Japanese are looking for some industry that's going to replace the diminishing role of automobiles and automobile parts in the Japanese economy. And as everybody knows who's been watching this briefing, about 50% of the Japanese economy is reliant on automobiles and automobile parts. So when the president of the United States says, I'm going to tax you 25% for automobiles and automobile parts, that is a death knell. And so they got it down to 15. There's probably a little bit of squishiness there too. But the policymakers, not just in the administration, but in the bureaucracy too, is wondering what can we have. The automobiles are going to continue to get hammered. The age of the automobiles is kind of beginning to eclipse. And in any event, since we were the powerhouse throughout the world in producing automobiles, now we have a lot of copycats. The French, the British, the Americans, they're coming up with cars and they've put protective barriers around their markets as well. We've tried to overcome that by producing in these various countries, not just the United States, but Toyota and Nissan, they're producing in all the other countries as well to over, to skip over the tariff barriers and the trade barriers. But it's getting a little bit old hat, and they're looking for how can we use the technology that we have just in time servicing the parts, the components, the technology that's embedded in a product that everybody in the world acknowledges. Wow, this is the best. This car, it never breaks down. It talks to me. It's easy to drive. It's cost efficient. So something that is even better than cars. Military hardware, you use it, it's gone. You have to replace it. So that flow of production is even more uh, vociferous than automobiles. So they want to get into that, but Article 9 prevents Japan from producing offensive weaponry and even storing nuclear materials um, that are of an offensive nature in Japan, even though we know, wink and nod, that the United States has them. They have them in Okinawa. They have them on their submarines that visit ports here. But the Constitution, well, basically the Constitution says Japan will not hold them or harbor them or use them. And so we're getting very close to that border where you might as well admit that you are pursuing that, you're using that, and then when you change the article of the Constitution to accommodate that, then all of a sudden things start flowing. So I think we are getting very close to that, and I think with Ms. Takaichi, who is on the right-hand side of the spectrum, is committed to changing the Constitution, but not so loudly saying it. But also, Ishin is on board with that too. I think the economy would benefit from that. But once again, it's not allowed in the Constitution. And number two, let's say you change the Constitution to allow that. Now, Japan is not a country with a peace constitution, but it's now selling arms to other people. You become a target. And then a lot of people in the Japanese population say, wait, no. We did that once before. We don't trust you guys. So we want the peace constitution. We don't want you industrialists and you guys, you corporate guys, to kind of get on board and do this again, because we know where it leads. Look what you guys did to us before. So, yeah, it's a tough issue.
Right. So the next question from Rian is, what would be the internal process politically if Japan were to pivot towards a defense export economy?
Okay, so once again, we've gone into this. It's a little bit early in the process to get into the details, but what it requires is a referendum. And a referendum, it's a two-step process. The Diet would propose a revision to the Constitution. It would be offered to the population. I think in the referendum, it needs to be accepted by, I forget the numbers. It's either 2/3 of the vote of the general population, and then it comes back to the Diet, and then the Diet votes on it. But it has to go through step 1 first, and then step 2 in the Diet, and then they would revise the Constitution. It's not impossible. It is a bit difficult, especially for an issue like defense and revising the Constitution. On this particular point, the Japanese Constitution has never been revised. It's unique in almost human history for a Constitution to be surviving 70 years and not have a period or a word changed in it. It hasn't been changed at all. So I think it's about time for the Japanese people to revise their constitution in a lot of different ways. So I don't think the first one out of the cage will be constitutional revision of Article 9. It would be too shocking. I think they'll come up with some other light changes that a referendum everybody could agree upon. It would go back to the Diet. The Diet would vote on it, and then they would change the Constitution. So it's a process that needs to, first of all, be initiated. And then the difficult one of changing the Constitution needs to come a little bit later in the process, unless something happens where the self-defense forces member is killed in action, or space debris from a rocket fired by North Korea falls and hits a fisherman. Somebody is damaged or killed. Then the revision of the Constitution would be on a greased skid. So you need to watch out for that.
Right. Yes, and the last question from Rian today is, does Japan have any equivalent to R&D or RAND, CSIS, and ISW? So these are the American institutes that basically do research on defense and policy, and also war research and so on.
Sure. There are a bunch of them. There are a bunch of them on both sides. So the Sasakawa Foundation has one about peace and harmony and helping the Pacific nations and that sort of thing. Sasakawa is actually a very huge think tank. There are some on the other side, Nomura, that is always producing white papers. The Diet, individual members of the parliament, request research papers that are not colored by the bureaucracy. They're not colored by the corporations. They're kind of thought pieces that stand the test or will stand the test of time. They've got smart people working on that. So I think that's the question, right? Are there think tanks? Are there
Yes, in
institutions
Japan.
that are
Yes,
producing this? Yes, there are
yes.
quite a few.
Yes, thank you. Moving on to Safi's questions now. So again, Safi, thank you very much for joining. And well, he writes, given that Sanae Takaichi is leading Japan's first female-headed government and also minority coalition, what is her most viable path to effective governance? Should her strategy focus on building a stable policy-based coalition with opposition parties, or on calling a snap election to seek her own public mandate despite the high risk of further losses?
That's a loaded question, Safi. And by the way, it's great to see you again. Thanks for joining us. Um, yeah, if I had to just make a call, I would say I think um, her best strategy forward is being bold and making some relevant changes that are going to capture the imagination. I think she can spend time on the opposition. I think if she can at least secure Ishin and keep Ishin happy, your capital Osaka is going to be the secondary capital. We've already agreed to the high school education to be free and for food to be provided to the students. And yes, we have been successful in reducing by 10% the lower house. So now you and I, we're tight. We hold 50% of the lower house at least. In order for that to be initiated, there has to be there has to be an election, and it's almost 3 years away if you just follow the typical pattern of uh, rotation of the lower house, because it was just this time last year when Mr. Ishiba decided to do it. So we've got another 3 years plus for it to run its course, and I don't think the dynamics would support that. I think that we'll finish out this year. We'll move into the next year, pass the budget, and then that's once you pass the budget, then it becomes the funny time. So they pass the budget in April 1st, or maybe a little bit before, and then the 150-day normal diet session, you're almost halfway through it. That's when things really begin to heat up, because they've finished their constitutional obligation of passing the budget. And now there are other things. There are policies, there are laws, there are regulations that they need to consider. But that's when people who have a little bit of extra time on their hands, or maybe they see an advantage, they begin to play that. So I think it'll be a while. I don't think she'll do a snap election. I think that would be unwise at this particular point in time. But that's what Mr. Ishiba did. He suffered from it, but he didn't have the popularity that the current prime minister does. So stay
We'll
tuned
see.
every week.
Stay tuned. Yes, yes. All right. Continuing with the next question from Safi. Given the historical U.S. pivot to a partner-led U.S.-enabled counter-terrorism approach in Afghanistan and a broader Indo-Pacific strategy centered on India as a counterweight to China, what are the most viable avenues for Prime Minister Takaichi to advance Japanese interests in South Asia? How can Japan maintain constructive relations with a Pakistan that is increasingly aligned with China through frameworks like CPEC, while simultaneously deepening its strategic coordination with the US in India without being drawn into their direct confrontations with Beijing?
Oh my God. Thanks, Safi. So, Safi,
It's a
you
big
are
question. Yes.
you are an expert in foreign policy and in military dynamics, and you've been in the foreign ministry. You've represented your country for many years. I can't hold a candle to what analysis you might be able to provide. But let me just select one part of your question, and that is, what can Japan do? What can the current prime minister do to kind of coalesce the Asia Pacific partners that it has? And what Japan has done is, in fact, I think Ed Naito has got an article. It's either published or he's working on it, where ODA, Overseas Development Assistance from Japan, that's usually how Japan plays diplomacy. It's checkbook diplomacy. They've been criticized for it, but I think that's one of the things that they can do about giving funds to like-minded countries, especially in the Asia Pacific and particularly the island nations who, yeah, they're in a very delicate position. They're being courted by the Chinese as well. Brick and Road and the BRICS
The
joining BRICS,
belt, yes. The
Belt and
road
Road.
initiative, yes.
They're all being tempted with that, and some of them have succumbed to it. So there's that battle that's going on. Be a part of our sphere, and we'll build bridges and port facilities, and we might station a couple of people over there and maybe build a bigger embassy. But besides that, nothing much. So they're confronted with that, and I think what the prime minister is bent on doing is reinitiating, accelerating the amount of overseas development that Japan will be giving. They're already very active in it. In the Philippines, they're giving Coast Guard vessels. They're working on sharing technology with other countries. They're actually hosting many countries' military assets to be jointly shared in a potential conflict with China. So there's a lot going on there. But yes, I think that one of the foreign policy imperatives of Japan is to build this coalition stronger and more robust. And that is why with South Korea saying that they're going to start developing nuclear-powered submarines, Japan wants to do that too, because that's there are not many countries that can produce for sale a submarine. So they want a piece of that. Those are big ticket items. Usually it's like with jets, and they're already in an agreement with Italy, Britain, and Japan to build the next generation fighter. That's a big ticket item that other countries will buy. And when you buy into that, you don't just buy one airplane, you buy a fleet. So it's a big ticket item. Similarly, with the warships or with the destroyers or with the submarines, it's a fleet that you purchase. So it's a big ticket item that can boost the economy.
All right, thank you for that. Moving on. Yuka, thank you for your question. Thank you for being with us and for complimenting Timothy on the fluff on his microphone. Yes. Yes, thank you for that. So the question from Yuka is, has Ms. Takaichi introduced any formal policy measures to address Japan's growing akiya or vacant housing problem?
I do remember hearing something about that when she was running as a candidate for prime minister. I do remember hearing her say something about integrated resorts, that she is a proponent of that. She's not going to fight it. She thinks it's something, and that's another kind of boost to the economy. There are a lot of people that don't want integrated resorts because there's this fear of a gambling addiction that is, some people would say, a characteristic of the Japanese genome. Some people like gambling and some people don't. Apparently, the Japanese are prone to a gambling addiction. I don't know how solid that evidence is, but there are many people that say we don't want gambling in Japan. She has said, I would consider it would be a boost to the economy. It would generate, actually, integrated resorts would just supercharge any city where it is based. MGM has secured a license in Osaka at Yumenoshima, the same man-made island where the expo was, the broken ground there. And I think they'll be opening a grand complex, which includes a casino. But I think by law, the casino is relegated to less than 3% of the area of the integrated resorts. But with regard to what the what was the issue she was asking about?
Oh, the Akia. Yes.
Oh, the Akia. So
Akia policies. Yes.
with regard to the Akia, I don't quite recall her saying something specific about that. But yes, there needs to be rules and regulations about. Yeah, I think there was some comment made because something is in my memory that if they're not going to uh, clear the legal ownership and claim it, then they either have to pay a tax or they have to clear the land. They have to destroy it, make it an open land, because then it's easy to sell. When there's still a structure on the land, nobody wants to go in. Nobody wants to assume the cost of, number one, cleaning the place out and maybe fixing it up, or cleaning it out and then destroying it so that you have residential land, and then actually the value of that property increases. But everybody knows Japan is a mountainous area. There are mountains and rivers. There's coastline. Less than 6% of the land is arable. So that means that only 6% of the entire land mass of Japan is fit for farming, fit for construction of residence, fit for building a factory or a city. So it's I think Akia is a very complicated story, and it's representative of what's going on in Japan with the declining population and the old people kind of dying off. The house construction, it's when you build a house in Japan, they last for 20 or 30 or maybe 40 years, but not much more than that. It's not like in Europe where they build a house, or in Bulgaria where they build a house. It lasts for 100 years, sometimes 200
More,
years, right, Mark?
even more
Yeah.
than that. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Mm.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that, Yuka. I hope that this answered your question. But of course, we'll
Yeah.
continue following Ms. Takaichi's policies and report on them as well, because I think that we all have high expectations now, because her first days in power were really promising. And also, yes, who wrote this? I wanted to say that. Okay. Oh, yes. Peter Pan actually wrote that I may be mistaken, but the election of Prime Minister Takaichi has started a new attitude of the younger generation of Japan. So
It
yes,
has.
indeed. It seems that there is more interest in politics among the younger generations, which is really wonderful, because we need more people to be following, to be interested, to be engaged as well. All
Yeah.
right. And thank you for this. Now I'm moving to Harry Wright's question. He says, hello, Maya and Mr. Langley. If the Supreme Court narrows the International Emergency Economic Powers Act and the US response shifts to the section 232301, what are the most likely impacts on Japan's priority export sectors? And what three concrete actions should Japan take now at the government, industry, and small and medium enterprise levels to preempt tariff shock and protect made in Japan trade flows? I think it's
Well, I thought so Safi
was
threw me a curveball. I don't even understand this question.
Well, Harry, thank you so very much for the question. I think it is really difficult, and I do hope that IEEPA is actually what I thought it was, because I am not an American, and I had to do a brief search to understand the abbreviation. But yes, so I believe that we need to think about what Japan actually needs to do in order to protect Japan's trade power in relation to tariffs, and also maybe the closed government as well, the shutdown of the government. Harry, if you can make the question a little bit easier to understand for somebody like me who is not
Or
American,
me?
please do that. or you, yes, please do that. Help us do that so that we can answer it. Okay. And well, also, yes, Greg, I understand that, and I believe that you are right. The power of the garage cannot be understated,
That's for
Timothy.
sure.
Yes, that's for sure. And yes, Andrew, thank you for commenting and for being with us too. Andrew says to the comment about the government shutdown, and he says, to my knowledge, the illegal aliens are a bigger threat to Chicago than gang members. With much respect. Okay, and then we've got also
Which Andrew was that?
Andrew Goins.
Okay,
Yes,
right,
uh,
from
yeah,
Atlanta.
yes, from Atlanta. And okay, so I think that Manabe-san came back and he wrote, while appointments up to the vice minister level are the government's intention, personnel decisions on the bureaucratic side can determine the success or failure of the government's administration, depending on the cooperation between the government and the bureaucrats. How does this compare to the Abe administration? So, Timothy, yes, your interpretation of the question was right, I believe. But so there is, I think, an extension to this question, to the previous question of Manabe-san. How does this compare to the Abe administration at the moment, the current one and Abe's administration?
I don't know if I can respond to that one very succinctly or accurately. I'd need a little bit of time to think about that.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a bit of a pecking order. There are people that are waiting. There are people that have done favors that they deserve an appointment or a kick upstairs. This is all managed by the LDP. When the prime minister becomes prime minister, they begin to identify their cabinet. Frequently, the ministers are, the last call is by the prime minister. The vice minister, there's a pecking order, and there is a long train of people who deserve or that require or who should be giving a vice ministerial position. And for the vice minister, there are some ministers that say, I know you're the vice minister, but bug off. I don't like you. You and I have issues, but I'm going to run the ministry. You take a back seat. And then there are other ministers who say, I'm going to focus on these two issues. You have to do this and this and this, and I'm going to be calling you, and I want it to be done. So they're much more active there. But it's really it. I don't think it changes from the Abe administration to the Takaichi administration. I'm not particularly familiar with the issue with the chief cabinet secretary, but for strategic purposes, you might want to pick somebody in a ministry in order to reward the ministry or to begin to coach that ministry a little bit differently. He is a vice minister. He's reporting to the prime minister, or at least to the minister, and he has much power to tell the ministry, do it this way and not that way. And even though I was a director or in charge of a very important part in the ministry, now I have power, and you guys ignored me before on these issues that I felt strongly about, for example, on Taiwan, and now I'm vice minister, so my philosophy holds sway, at least as long as this administration. So that's how the administration kind of controls that and influences policy. But as we all know, Japan is strong and stable not because of politics per se. Politics is very ramshackle, but for the ministries, for the various bureaucracies that run and control how the machinery of government works, that's very stable. So even though you might have ups and downs and a little bit of turmoil and scandal at the political level, you almost never get it at the bureaucratic level. So the way you reward and control that is by appointing vice ministers from the various ministries
Yeah.
to assume a leadership role. And before I go on any further, because it relates to one of the other questions, these fellows who become vice ministers, after the administration, they might go back to their bureaucracy or the ministry that they were at. But in the meantime, they've created more enemies in that ministry, and it might be better for them just to, this is their last hurrah, their swan song. They were vice minister, and now it's time for them to retire. And they get picked up by these think tanks like Sasakawa or a university professorship or something like that. And they write these white papers that an earlier question was referring to. And I think that if the 10% reduction of diet seats is successful, that means there will be a lot of new college professors and a new batch of people who are joining these think tanks, because they're professional politicians. They've been maybe one or two or three times a member of parliament, and now the reduction is in place. They lost their diet seat. What happens to them? There's not this kind of rotating door like there is in the United States, where you join the government and then you go back to industry and you join one of the companies that you were administering or managing as an administrator with the government, and going back in like that, which happens pretty frequently in the United States. It's roundly criticized, but it's how things work there. But that's not how it works here in Japan. So there's no real true path. There's a lot of professorships. There are amukudari that could happen after a year or 2 years of being in hiatus and not participating too actively in the political process or the corporate process. But yeah, I think you're going to see a little bit more activity there.
Yes, and also there is another thing, from people who have worked in Kasumigaseki for quite a while. When I talk with them, I understand that basically what really matters is the channels that the LDP as a party has created for communication with the bureaucrats there. And there was indeed an internal conflict when what is now the CDP came into power in 2009, because those channels were not utilized, right? And the CDP, well, that party at the time, sorry, so they tried to create new ones, and it didn't work very well. First of all, because they had an entirely different approach, and second, because they didn't have enough time to build the channels, right, and to stabilize them. So I think that at this point of time, probably as long as Ms. Takaichi is at the helm of the party and of the government, or maybe somebody else from the LDP, there's not going to be much of a problem regarding the communication between Kasumigaseki and Nagatacho. But of course, we'll follow that too, and we'll talk about it as well.
So Maya, in acknowledging what you've just said, it kind of tells me that you need to keep an eye on developing scandals, because that's another tool that can be used. It's kind of subterfuge. The fact that this guy is in trouble because he's drinking, or he took money, or because he's sleeping with somebody, I didn't say that. It just happens that he is, and he's one of my opposition individuals. It's a safe way to launch an attack from a protected space. So keep your eye out for beginning scandals, even for having a crooked toenail, or your husband wore a Hawaii shirt and it seems like somebody's making money off of that. So of course there's collusion and there's corruption going on. Who knows? These four scandals that I talked about earlier, they're potential scandals at this point, but they, as we all know, scandal is a component of Japanese politics, so you need to watch out for it.
Okay, and then one more question. Harry Wright came back. Thank you very much for doing that, Harry. Very much appreciated. So he says, a little more simpler ask.
Okay.
If the Supreme Court limits the White House's emergency tariff powers and the US switches to its usual trade tools, what does that mean for Japan's main exports? And what three moves should Japan take right now? One by government, one by industry groups, and one by small and medium enterprises to prevent sudden tariff shocks and keep Made in Japan moving.
Okay, so just a bit of background for the audience. The Supreme Court is reviewing the ability of the President of the United States to impose tariffs in the way that the Trump administration has done. And if they consider, and the hearing is very close, I think it's next week, and even Mr. Trump said he might attend the arguments at the Supreme Court. I don't know if a president of the United States has ever, a sitting president has ever attended um, uh, a Supreme Court hearing. So this would be a first, and have the president there in court. That would be really something. So it's very important to the president that the Supreme Court says it's within the bounds of his authority to impose tariffs. So that's the issue. Is it legal for the president of the United States to impose the tariffs in the way that the Trump administration has? That's the core of the question. So if the Supreme Court comes down and says, no, Mr. President, you can't do that, you need to walk this back, the question is, what are the things that Japan should do in order to protect itself or to promote itself? And that is a really big question. I can't get into it now. I haven't really considered it. Maybe next week, if we can have a bit of a communication privately, maybe over LinkedIn, about the attributes that you're seeking to have responded to on this program, then maybe next week we can go into it a little bit better, maybe in the main presentation. But it's a good question. What happens if the Supreme Court says, Mr. Trump, everything that you've done is illegal and you need to walk it back? It is not authorized. What happens? That's a great question.
Yes. Okay. So let's do that. I hope that Harry, right, you don't mind communicating with Timothy about this, and yes, we can look into it and give you a better, more detailed answer. Well, and with this, then, Timothy, I think that you can safely say, "Oh, I'm so tired. I can go, and now go back to my daily activities." Because it seems that we have gone through the comments and the questions. To everybody who stayed with us, we appreciate your being here. We appreciate your sharing these. Your thoughts and your questions. Thank you for helping us understand them, some of them as well, because once again, please forgive me, I'm not American and I do not share that data set, with our American audience. So, and of course, if you feel that these briefings may be helpful to colleagues, family members, also friends, or your bosses, please share them and help us spread the word. Again, we do not charge for them anything, even though Timothy joked about this in the beginning. But yes, we're here and we are happy to be able to create that or help you create that picture in your head. Yes, Timothy, I see that you are ready to say something else.
Well, I just want to say how much I appreciate people tuning in to this program. Understanding and following Japanese politics is not everybody's cup of tea. I understand that. I appreciate that. It's dry, it's boring, it's just a bunch of old guys in loud suits, and they never get anything done. So for those of you in the audience, I really appreciate it. It is Japanese politics is important, and it's crucial to understand it. And you join us every week, and the audience just continues to grow. And it really is encouraging to me. This is something that I've been doing my whole professional career, is being involved in Japanese politics. And it's nice when other people are interested and curious and ask good questions, and they want to know too. And it's fun for me because these are things that it's a gift. I don't mind not charging for it because it's an engaging conversation, and I so much appreciate most of the time, except at 8:20, giving you the opportunity to ask questions and to learn more about what's going on behind the scenes and the mechanics and that sort of thing. I don't have all the answers, but I hope you do get some value, and I'm not wrong more times than I am right on the analysis that I provide you. Thank you.
Yes, and now I see there is another question about the legislation about foreigners. Please let us talk about this next week. Mario,
Yeah.
thank you very much for asking the question. I apologize that I was late to see it, but next week we'll touch upon this as well, and we'll have probably more information about it as well. So to everybody, once again, thanks a lot for this, and have a great weekend. And a bright new week. And we're looking forward to seeing you next week again, 8:20. And we'll see. Hopefully the weather will be better. Timothy will be on the deck and not in the
Yes.
boat. Right.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
Maya.
you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
Timothy. See you next time.